Good morning, Hungary. Glad to have you here on the morning schedule of VGE News. Today, we will be discussing inflation and the most shocking cases in history. So, sit back, relax, and be ready to learn. To start this segment, we have here Professor Pierce to give us a better idea of how inflation works. So, Professor, first of all, it's truly a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, the pleasure's all mine.
So, tell us, Professor, what is inflation?
Well, quite simply put, inflation is the rate that shows how much prices of goods and services rise in one economy. So, a low inflation rate is common for most countries in the world.
What are the differences between inflation and deflation?
Well, we can mostly say from their names, but inflation occurs when prices of goods and services rise, like I said, and deflation is the opposite, when the prices decrease. So inflation is considered beneficial for the producers, and deflation is considered beneficial for us, the consumers.
And which one is better?
Well, deflation completely ruins the economy, and moderate levels of inflation help it kind of grow, so you tell me.
Professor, I know that your field of study is inflation in Zimbabwe, so could you please tell us what made it so interesting to you?
Well, Zimbabwe had the second highest inflation in history and the first of the 21st century, so that's what made it really interesting for me. Their prices increased by 79.6 billion percent. So that meant at one point a bag of sugar cost 90 billion Zimbabwean dollars and a loaf of bread was like 30 billion, and their average salaries were about 200 billion, so you can see how they paid and lived.
Yeah, terrible situation. When did the problem started and exactly what happened?
Well, the hyperinflation itself happened in 2008, but it's hard to know how bad the situation actually got because the government stopped reporting the numbers after a certain point. So in 2000, Robert Mugabe's government began forcibly seizing land from white farmers for redistribution, and the new farmers usually had little or no experience in the agriculture. So from 2000 to 2009, the total agricultural output was cut in half. This destroyed their economy and their food supply.
It's truly shocking how a country can experience such a catastrophe like that. Could you tell us how did the people reacted to this?
Well, workers actually stopped going to work after their salary couldn't pay for the bus ride home. And to keep up with this, the central bank kept printing bigger and bigger banknotes. So they started by printing $1 million and then 100 billion and finally 100 trillion, which was worth actually just 40 US dollar cents.
Were they able to resolve the problem? If so, how could they manage to balance out their economy?
Well, when inflation accelerated, the government tried to put on some measures like limiting money withdrawal or price freezes, but the population soon moved on to foreign currencies. In 2009, the country created a multi-currency dollarization system that replaced the Zimbabwean dollar. And although this calmed the situation for a while, until today there are still reports that the inflation rate is about 50% in the country.
That's still bad. Thank you very much for your help and time, Professor Pierce. It was an honor to have you here. I'm sure our viewers could learn a lot from what you presented to us today.
Thank you for having me.
Don't go anywhere. After the break, we will be live with our colleague Tyler, who will be reporting to us from Caracas, Venezuela, to see how is the economy over there and explore their inflation nowadays. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Good evening, Hungary, and welcome back to BG News. Today I'm your host, Mate, and this is my colleague, Shara, and this is Hungary for Facts. Have you ever wondered why can't we just print more money to solve financial problems?
Well, in Hungary, after the Second World War, they sure did, and made the whole population billionaires.
They, of course, had lots of money, but couldn't afford anything, which is still good.
Today we are going to talk about the history's biggest economic crisis.
It all started in Hungary in 1927 when they changed the currency from korona to penge.
For a long time, penge was considered the most reliable currency in Eastern Europe.
Lands were reassigned to Hungary, which was a real economical issue due to their underdevelopment. This meant that Budapest had to invest a lot in these areas.
In the early 1940s, Hungary openly sided with the German Nazis and became dependent from them.
Because of this, factories had to increase their productions. In 1944, Hungary was occupied by the Third Reich and 40% of the fixed capital was destroyed. In 1945, the Third Reich drove out the Nazis out of the country.
By this time, the Hungarian gold worth $32 million, but Germany has took it, so it landed in their hands after the war.
This meant the Hungarian money had nothing to rely on.
Since the Red Army was in Hungary, the government couldn't make any decisions.
More than one-third of Hungary's money was dedicated to pay the reparation for the winner side, the USSR, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia.
Meanwhile, there was a massive need of shirts in the country and the workers begged for a raise.
In 1945, economic problems and politics overlapped each other. By the end of the year, Hungary started to print more and more money and didn't even think about the consequences.
You can see on this graph how bad inflation really was month by month. It shows how much pengos equal to 1 USD.
They stopped the circulation of coins and started to print larger amounts of bills. In early April, they released the first 1 million pengo note. Later, the 10 million. Then in May, the 100 million and 1 billion bills. At this point, the value of the money worth less than the paper it was printed on.
Printing didn't stop there. Even new names were invented to use for these new bills. Some of them was called milpengo, which was used for 1 million pengos, and the other one was bilpengo, which was used for 1 trillion pengos.
In the June of 1946, they issued the biggest note in history, the 1 quadrillion pengo, which was 1 billion milpengos. At the time, it worth around 2.4 USD cents. In the summer of 1946, a kilogram of bread was 6 billion pengos, which means the pengos worth decreased 1 billion times over the year. They used to joke around with the situation and said if you left a bag of money on the streets, the thief would take the bag and leave the money.
When it was payment time, they had to bring suitcases to pick up all the notes that they worked for. But how did Hungary reverse this situation?
The UN has given food supplies to Hungarians and $4 million. The USA gave a $50 million loan to boost economy, and Harry Truman agreed with the Hungarian Prime Minister to return all the gold that has been captured by the USA during the war. To get rid of all the worthless bills, they changed the currency, and on the 1st of August in 1946, they released forint, which Hungarians still use.
And this was Hungry for Facts.
Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye for now.
Have a pleasant evening.
Bye!